I've been here at Wharton for about a month and a week now. I've met a lot of amazing people from many different backgrounds, and I'm just so impressed with everyone that I've met. I come from a little bit of a different background, and to be honest, if you had known me 15 years ago, you probably wouldn't have wanted to associate with me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why. So my family immigrated from Mexico back in the mid 80s to escape the cartel violence in northern Mexico at that time. So they came on over as undocumented immigrants. My parents met up in LA, and that's where they had me. So life in the US was safer for us. It was better, but we did live paycheck to paycheck. Eventually my dad ended up leaving us early on, and then it was just my mom, me, and my younger brother. So she usually worked 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet for us. So I got my first job when I was 11. I've had a job ever since. So remember, there was like a taco truck that would be posted up outside of Latin nightclubs. And I would be the kid that would sell you like gum and mints so your breath won't, smell so bad once you go back into the club. And I'd be posted up in front of the entrance. And I sold that every night. I made like, 200 to 150 bucks. And that was like my first taste of like being independent. But things started to take a turn after, in my teens, I started kind of falling into the wrong crowd. Most of my friends at the time were in gangs, or they were like, gang affiliated. We started getting into trouble at school, cut classes. We got into fights all the time. And then we'd end up doing stupid shit like going tagging. We'd cut class and go tagging, which is when you go to a side of a building or something, and then you spray paint the side or some random words or things like that. And then that devolved into people breaking into people's houses or their cars. And I'd be like the getaway driver because I'm the only one who knew how to drive and had a car. So I remember one day, one of them brought back a gun, like a 44 revolver, and they put it in my hands, and I never held one before. And that's my first inkling of, something's not 100% here. But, I kept on going with it. So that led to a couple arrests, minor. I went into that because I didn't have any real positive male role models. I wanted to belong, and these were a group of guys where I felt accepted. They were from where I came from, so I felt like I could relate. Things kind of went on like this for the next few years. Eventually, my buddy and we get in a fight with some random people in the street, and I don't even remember how this started, but we start fighting, and then one of them pulls out a knife, and then my buddy gets stabbed on the side. So they scatter. I run over to him and stay with him while he bleeds out, and he's just holding my arm. I'm holding his hand, and he's just trembling. He's just looking into my eyes. He's in terror. I'm in terror. I don't know what to tell him. I see him, all the blood coming out, and then I don't even know, should I take the knife out or not? Eventually, someone calls the cops, and the ambulance comes and picks him up, and he tells me, you need to call my mom, let her know what happened and all that. And I've never met her before. I've never talked to her. This would be my first interaction with her, and it would be me, a stranger, telling her, hey, your son is dying. She starts crying on the phone, and then she hangs up. So I decide there that I don't want that kind of life anymore, or where it led. But that if I wanted things to change, I had to make that happen on my own. So I try to come up with a plan. So our main issue for me and my family is socioeconomic. We have a lack of wealth. How do we fix that? A career could be a good option. How do you get a career? You need to go to college, you get a degree. How the fuck do you get a college degree? You need a lot of money for that. It's kind of a catch-22. I'm trying to gain wealth to get a job to gain wealth, but you need a college, which needs a lot of money. So yeah. My friend ends up surviving, but a few years later, he ends up getting deported. And somehow I barely graduate high school. I do some research, and a friend starts telling me about the military, the Navy, where, tells me all the benefits. So I get a chance to travel the world. I get a respectable job, a chance to serve my country, much needed discipline, and the opportunity to go to college. So I start telling my parents this. My mom had gotten remarried at that point. My friends, this is just my plan, but the truth is, like, deep down, I'm still afraid of making that step forward and like changing up my life and leaving everything I knew behind. So Months go on, nothing really happens. My mom's just kind of nagging me, hey, when are you going to go to the recruiter? I told her eventually. One day, one night, I go downstairs and my mom and my stepdad they finished having dinner and they're having a conversation. They were thinking about going back to Mexico for a few years just to get away from the US, just take a break. And my stepdad says, like, yeah, no, what's going to happen with Tony? Is he going to go to the Navy? Is he coming with us? Like, what's going on with him? And then my mom says, she says, don't listen to him. He's not going anywhere. I know my son. I can't really explain how it feels to have your mom lose hope in you. Anger is part of the equation, but part of it at her, but mostly at me, because she was right, absolutely. So I go back upstairs. I'm like determined to like prove her and myself wrong. So like I go to sleep early. I wake up the next day like super early around 6 a.m. and I drive to the nearest recruiting station, which was around 45 minutes from where we lived. So I'm pumped at this point. I'm ready to like take the step forward. And then in my haste to kind of make this thing happen, I get there and I forget that it's President's Day, a federal holiday. So everything's closed. Recruiting stations, military, everything. And I'm basically feeling kind of defeated at this point. I'm kind of like, all the air from my balloon is deflated. I'm about to go back to my car and just drive back and just glue my tail between my legs. And that's when around the corner comes this guy with his two kids. And he comes up behind me. He's like, hey, what are you doing here? Can I help you with something? And I go, yeah, I'm just hoping I was going to talk to a recruiter, but they're closed today. I was thinking about joining the military. He gives me his card, introduces himself. Petty Officer, First Class, John Jennings. I'll never forget him. He says, come talk to me. Today's my day off. I'm just here to pick up some papers, but, let's talk. So I start the process with him. He starts going over everything with me. A few weeks go by and I'm ready to go and sign the contract, but he can tell that I'm still a little bit hesitant. So he tells me, all right, look, give me 4 years, 4 years of your time, of your service, of your life, and I'll give you a future. So I looked at him and I said, okay. And I signed the paperwork and I went back to my mom and then she started crying at that point. So, I think back on that moment a lot and it's like, he really was only there for 5 minutes. He wasn't supposed to be there. And if I hadn't met him at that time, honestly, I wouldn't be here right now. So, I think you make your own destiny, but sometimes the universe or life puts people or opportunities in front of you. So it's up to you to make that happen. So I started training for boot camp. I ended up actually doing really well in the military. So I found out that I don't want to have a career, do 20 years here. And then I said I want to go back to school. So I started taking night classes at my community college after my military duties were done. And I started doing like pretty well actually. And I'm like, oh wow, I can actually do this. I gained enough credits to transfer to Ford University at UT Austin after the end of my military contract. And the GI Bill paid for my education. I ended up graduating with a dual degree in finance and economics. I got a few good internships along the way with PwC, then later with Goldman Sachs. And then I accepted a full-time offer with Microsoft. So I reflect back and I realized like the military saved my life, but it started with the internal process and the realization that no one was coming to save me. And instead, I had to make positive choices. I had to change that on my own. Nothing was just going to happen for you. So my wealth goal changed to, as time went on, is like, okay, why was it so hard for people like me in my background to make it here? Why is it in an MBA class, why are Latinos only 6%? Why is the Black community only 10%, or even women only 41%? I don't have the answer. My hope is that I can become part of the solution. And I think it starts with listening. So honestly, as much as I've enjoyed being up here, I'm more interested in learning your story. So thank you for listening to mine.